Daniel Harper had not spoken to another human being in 7 months. He liked it that way. His cabin sat deep in the Montana mountains, far from roads and towns, and people who asked questions he did not want to answer. He had built this life carefully after his wife died 3 years ago. He had been a paramedic in the city saving strangers while the woman he loved faded away in a hospital bed. When she was gone, he sold everything and disappeared into the wilderness. The silence suited him. The loneliness felt like punishment, and punishment felt right. He was sitting by his fireplace on a cold October night when the sky exploded. The sound came first, a roar that shook the walls and rattled the windows. Then came the light, bright enough to turn midnight into noon for 3 long seconds. Daniel was on his feet before he knew what he was doing. His body still remembered emergencies even if his heart had forgotten how to care. He grabbed his heavy coat and a flashlight and stepped outside. The air smelled wrong, like burning metal and something chemical he could not name. To the east, beyond the tree line, smoke rose against the stars. Something had crashed in the ravine about half a mile from his cabin. Daniel told himself to go back inside. Whatever had fallen from the sky was not his problem. He was done with problems. He was done with trying to save things that could not be saved. But his feet carried him forward anyway, crunching through dead leaves and frozen ground. 20 years of training did not vanish just because a man wanted to be left alone. The ravine was steep and rocky. Daniel climbed down carefully, using tree roots as handholds. The smoke grew thicker as he descended. When he reached the bottom, he stopped and stared. It was a ship, not an airplane or a helicopter or anything made by human hands. The craft was small, maybe the size of a delivery truck, with smooth curves and a surface that looked like polished obsidian. Half of it had crumpled on impact. Strange fluids leaked from cracks in the hull, hissing where they touched the cold ground. Daniel stood frozen for a long moment. His mind refused to accept what his eyes were showing him. Then he heard the sound, a weak cry coming from inside the wreckage. He moved without thinking. He found a gap in the twisted metal and squeezed through. The interior was dark except for flickering lights on damaged panels. The air inside was thin and tasted of copper. Daniel swept his flashlight across the small space and found her. She was strapped into a seat that had partially collapsed. Her skin was pale blue, almost white in the flashlight beam. Her hair was silver and cut short. She looked young, maybe 18 or 20 by human standards, though Daniel had no idea how to judge the age of something that was clearly not human. Her clothing was torn and burned. Deep wounds crossed her arms and chest, oozing a fluid that glowed faintly green. She opened her eyes. They were violet and luminous like gemstones lit from within. She looked at Daniel and her mouth moved. The sounds that came out were not words he recognized. Then something at her throat crackled and a broken voice emerged, translated but damaged. "Please," she said, "do not let them find me." Daniel knelt beside her. His hands were already moving, checking her wounds, assessing damage. The paramedic in him had taken over completely. "Who is looking for you?" "Hunters," she whispered. "Slavers, they shot my ship. I ran, but they will follow." Daniel did not understand most of what she was saying. He did not need to understand. He needed to stop the bleeding and get her somewhere warm. Everything else could wait. "I'm going to move you," he said slowly and clearly. "It will hurt. I am sorry." She nodded weakly. Daniel found the straps holding her and released them. She cried out when he lifted her, a sound of pure agony that cut through him. He had heard that sound before, in emergency rooms and accident scenes. It was the sound of a body pushed past its limits. He carried her out of the wreckage and up the ravine. She weighed less than he expected, like her bones were hollow. She drifted in and out of consciousness as he climbed. Each time she woke, she whispered the same words through her broken translator. "They are coming, they will not stop." Daniel looked up at the sky as he walked. The stars looked different tonight. Among them, moving slowly against the fixed points of light, he could see 3 objects that had not been there before. They were distant but bright, and they seemed to be searching. He walked faster. The cabin felt different when he brought her inside. For 3 years it had been a tomb, a place where Daniel went to be alone with his grief. Now it was something else. Now it was a shelter. He laid the alien girl on his bed and lit every lamp he had. In the warm light, her wounds looked even worse. Daniel gathered his medical supplies. He had kept a full kit even out here, old habits that refused to die. He had bandages and antiseptic and painkillers and sutures. He had no idea if any of it would work on her. He had no idea how her body functioned or what might save her or kill her. He started with the basics. He cleaned the wounds as gently as he could. The green fluid was definitely blood, though it moved differently than human blood, slower and thicker. He applied pressure to the worst cuts and was relieved when the bleeding started to slow. At least that much was the same. The girl watched him work. Her violet eyes tracked his movements even when the rest of her body lay still. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Daniel did not look up from his work. "Why what? Why do you help me? You do not know me. You do not know my kind. There is no profit for you." Daniel paused. It was a fair question. He had asked himself similar questions many times over the past 3 years. Why try to save anyone when death always won in the end? Why care about strangers when caring only led to pain? "Because you need help," he said finally. "That is reason enough." The girl stared at him for a long moment. Then her eyes closed and she slipped into unconsciousness. Daniel worked through the night. He stitched and bandaged and cleaned. He checked her breathing and monitored her pulse, which beat strangely against his fingers. Outside, the searching lights in the sky grew closer. Daniel pulled the curtains shut and kept working. He had come to these mountains to die slowly, to fade away where no one would notice or care. Instead, the universe had dropped a dying girl on his doorstep and asked him to remember who he used to be. Daniel Harper, former paramedic, kept working until dawn. The first day was the worst. Daniel barely slept, watching the alien girl struggle to breathe while her body fought against wounds he could not fully understand. Her fever spiked in the morning, and her skin turned from pale blue to almost gray. He had no idea what was normal for her species. He only knew that gray was probably bad. He tried ice packs first. They helped with human fevers, but they made her shake so violently that he feared she would tear her stitches. He removed them and tried cool cloths instead, pressed gently against her forehead. That seemed to work better. Her trembling eased and her breathing steadied. By noon, Daniel had made a list of everything he knew about her biology. Her blood was green and copper-based instead of red and iron-based like human blood. Her heart was on the right side of her chest instead of the left. She had 2 pulses that beat at different speeds. Her bones felt lighter and more flexible than human bones. Her wounds healed slightly faster than human wounds but still needed help. He also made a list of everything he did not know. That list was much longer. The girl woke briefly in the afternoon. Her violet eyes found him sitting beside the bed, and she seemed surprised that he was still there. "Water," she whispered through her damaged translator. Daniel brought her a cup. She drank slowly, wincing with each swallow. When she finished, she looked at him with an expression he could not read. "My name is," she said. "Daniel," he replied. "Daniel Harper." "Daniel," she repeated, testing the sound. "Why have you not called your authorities? Why have you not turned me over to your government?" Daniel almost laughed. "I live alone in the mountains because I want nothing to do with governments or authorities. Besides, something tells me human authorities would not help your situation." Was quiet for a moment. "No," she agreed. "They would not. Your world is not ready to know about the wider galaxy. If your leaders found me, they would study me. They would cut me open to learn how I work." The thought made Daniel's stomach turn. "Then we will keep you hidden until you can leave." Shook her head weakly. "I cannot leave. My ship is destroyed. I have no way to contact my people, and even if I could, they are still out there. They will not stop hunting me." "Tell me about them," Daniel said. "Tell me about these." Closed her eyes. "They are slavers. They are a reptilian species, large and strong and cruel. They travel the galaxy capturing other species and selling them to the highest bidder. My people, though, are among their favorite targets." "Why?" "Because we are weak," said bitterly. "We are small and peaceful. We have no weapons, no armies. Our world was conquered 2 generations ago. Most of my kind live as slaves now. But that is not the only reason they hunt us." She paused, gathering strength. "Bodies produce certain chemicals that are valuable in galactic medicine. Our blood can be processed into drugs that extend life and cure diseases. We are worth more dead than alive to people like the—" Daniel felt cold anger building in his chest. He had seen cruelty in his work as a paramedic. He had seen what humans did to each other in the name of greed or hatred. But this was something else. This was industrialized evil on a scale he had never imagined. "How did you escape?" he asked. "There was a resistance group on the station where I was held. They smuggled me onto a ship and gave me coordinates to a safe world. I was almost there when they intercepted me. I tried to run. I made it to your system and your planet, but they hit my engines. I crashed. And now they are searching for you. Yes, 3 hunters at least. They tracked my signal here. They know I survived the crash. They will come for me, Daniel, and they will kill anyone who stands in their way. Daniel stood and walked to the window. Outside, the Montana wilderness looked the same as always. Pine trees and mountains and endless sky. But somewhere up there, among the stars he used to find peaceful, predators were circling. "How long do we have?" he asked. "I do not know, days maybe. They will be careful, they do not know your world well. They will study before they strike." Daniel nodded. A few days, he could work with that. The second day, his fever broke. Daniel found her sitting up in bed when he brought her breakfast, a simple meal of fruit and bread that he hoped her body could process. She ate slowly but steadily, and color began returning to her skin. "Your food is strange," she said between bites, "but not unpleasant. These red spheres are especially good." "Apples," Daniel said. "They grow on trees here." "We have nothing like them on my world, had nothing like them." Her voice carried old grief. "I barely remember what my world looked like. I was very young when we were taken." Daniel sat beside her. "Tell me about it if you want to." Was quiet for a long moment. It was beautiful, blue forests and silver oceans. We lived in floating cities that drifted on the wind. We were artists and philosophers. We studied the universe not to conquer it, but to understand it. We thought the galaxy would leave us in peace because we threatened no one. But it did not. No, they came with ships and soldiers. We had no weapons to fight them. We did not even understand war. In 1 week they conquered our entire planet. They took everything. Our cities, our art, our people, everything. Daniel did not know what to say. He had his own grief, his own losses, but they seemed small compared to losing an entire civilization. "I am sorry," he said finally. "That should not have happened to anyone." Looked at him with those strange violet eyes. "You are different than I expected. The galaxy thinks humans are primitive and dangerous. They say you kill each other over territory and resources. They say you are barely civilized." "We do kill each other," Daniel admitted. "We are not perfect, but we also help each other. We save each other. At least some of us try to." "Why?" asked. It was the same question she had asked before. "Why do you try? What do you gain?" Daniel thought about his wife. He thought about all the people he had saved as a paramedic and all the ones he had lost. He thought about the choice he had made to come to these mountains and disappear. "Because giving up feels worse than trying," he said. "Because I would rather fail while fighting than succeed at doing nothing." Stared at him for a long time. Then, for the first time since he had found her, she smiled. On the third day, Daniel's satellite phone picked up strange interference. Patterns that repeated too regularly to be natural. Signals that swept across the mountains like searchlights. The hunters were getting closer. Daniel began making preparations. By the fourth day, could walk short distances without help. She moved slowly and carefully, one hand pressed against her bandaged ribs, but she moved. Daniel watched her circle the small cabin with something like wonder. He had not expected her to recover this quickly. He had not expected her to recover at all. "Your medicines are crude but effective," said when she noticed him watching. "The green paste you put on my burns has helped more than anything we had on the station." "Aloe," Daniel said. "It grows naturally in warmer parts of this world. People have been using it for thousands of years." "Remarkable. Perhaps humans are more clever than the galaxy gives them credit for." Daniel smiled despite himself. It felt strange, that expression on his face. He could not remember the last time he had smiled. They ate dinner together that night, sitting at the small table by the window. Had developed a taste for apples and bread and the honey Daniel kept in his pantry. She could not eat meat, which her body rejected violently, but fruits and vegetables and grains suited her well enough. "Tell me about your life," said between bites. "You said you came here to be alone. Why?" Daniel set down his fork. He had not talked about this with anyone, but something about violet eyes and gentle voice made him want to speak. "I was married," he began. "Her name was. We met when I was training to be a paramedic and she was studying to be a teacher. She was kind and funny and she made me want to be better than I was." Listened without interrupting. "We were happy for 12 years. Then she got sick, cancer. The doctors tried everything but nothing worked. I watched her fade away over 2 years. Every day she got weaker. Every day I could do less to help her. I was trained to save lives, but I could not save hers." He stopped. The old pain was still there, sharp and deep. "When she died, I could not stay in the city anymore. Everything reminded me of her. The apartment we shared, the streets we walked together, the hospital where she took her last breath. So I sold everything and came here. I thought if I was far enough from the world I could forget how much it hurt." "Did it work?" asked softly. Daniel shook his head. "No, you cannot run from grief. It follows you wherever you go. But at least here I do not have to pretend I am fine. I can be broken in peace." Reached across the table and placed her hand on his. Her skin was cool and smooth, different from human skin but not unpleasant. "Among my people, grief is considered sacred," she said. "We do not try to escape it or overcome it. We carry it with us like a treasure. The weight of it proves that we loved something worth losing." Daniel looked at her hand on his. "That is a kinder way to think about it. Pain is not weakness, Daniel. Pain is proof that you are alive, that you still care about something beyond yourself." They sat in silence for a while, two wounded souls finding unexpected comfort in each other's presence. On the fifth day, told Daniel more about the galaxy beyond Earth. "Your world sits in a quiet corner of a very busy universe," she explained. They were sitting outside on the cabin's small porch, wrapped in blankets against the cold. "Dozens of intelligent species travel between the stars. Some are peaceful, some are not. Most ignore young worlds like yours. They consider you too primitive to be worth their attention." "That seems arrogant," Daniel said. "It is, but it is also protective in its way. If the galaxy knew what humans were truly capable of, you might not be left alone for long." "What do you mean?" Turn to look at him. "Your species evolved on a world that would kill most galactic life forms. Your gravity is crushing. Your atmosphere is corrosive. Your wildlife is deadly. Your weather systems are violent beyond imagination. Yet humans not only survive here, you thrive. You build cities and machines and art. You explore your planet and reach toward the stars. By galactic standards, you are impossibly tough." Daniel had never thought of Earth that way. To him, it was just home. "They are considered fierce warriors," continued. "They are large and strong and they heal quickly, but even they would struggle to survive a week on your planet. The cold alone would kill them. The bacteria in your water would poison them. Your world is a death trap for most galactic species." "But not for—" Shook her head. "We are fragile. Your world would kill us even faster than it would kill the only reason I have survived this long is because you have protected me from it." Daniel thought about this. He thought about the cabin, with its heating and filtered water and walls against the wind. He had built this refuge to escape from humanity. He had never considered that it might save someone from the planet itself. "The hunters," he said, "though will they struggle here too?" "Yes, they will bring environmental suits and breathing equipment. They will move carefully and slowly. Your world is hostile to them, but they will still come. The bounty on my head is worth the risk." Daniel nodded. He was beginning to form a plan. On the sixth day, his translator picked up communications. The signal was faint but clear. 3 hunters were approaching. They had pinpointed the crash site and were tracking residual energy signatures toward the cabin. They would arrive within 2 days. Wanted Daniel to leave. She begged him to take whatever supplies he could carry and disappear into the mountains. He was human. He could survive in the wilderness for weeks. They would take her and leave, and Daniel could return to his life of solitude. Daniel refused. "You saved me," said desperately. "You owe me nothing more. Why would you die for a stranger?" "Because you are not a stranger anymore," Daniel said. "Because I spent 3 years running from everything that mattered. I am done running." He began gathering supplies from around the cabin. Hunting rifles, ammunition, rope and wire, tools from his workshop. The mountains around his home were filled with narrow paths and steep drops and hidden caves. He had spent 3 years learning every inch of this terrain. If the wanted, they would have to come through him first. Watched him work with tears in her violet eyes. "You will die," she whispered. "They are soldiers, you are one man." Daniel loaded his rifle and checked the sight. One man who knows these mountains better than anyone alive. One man fighting on his own ground. One man with something worth protecting. He looked at her and smiled that unfamiliar smile. "I have been waiting 3 years for a reason to keep living. I think I finally found one." Outside, the stars turned slowly overhead. Somewhere among them, the hunters were coming. Daniel Harper, former paramedic, prepared to meet them. They arrived at dawn on the 8th day. Daniel had been awake all night, watching from a ridge overlooking the eastern approach to his cabin. He saw their ship first, a sleek black craft that slid silently through the gray morning light. It landed in a clearing half a mile away, and three figures emerged. Had described them, but seeing them in person was different. Each stood at least 7 feet tall. Their bodies were thick with muscle and covered in dark green scales. Their heads were elongated and their mouths were filled with sharp teeth. They wore black armor that seemed to absorb the morning light, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. Daniel watched them through his rifle scope. They moved cautiously, scanning the forest with handheld devices. Their environmental suits made them look even larger and more intimidating. But Daniel noticed something else too. They moved stiffly. They flinched at the cold. They stopped frequently to check their breathing equipment. Had been right, this world was hostile to them. One of them raised a device and spoke in a booming voice that echoed through the mountains. The translator built into Daniel's radio picked up the words. "Human, we know you are here. We know you have the. Surrender her to us and you will not be harmed. Resist and you will die. You have 1 hour to decide." Daniel did not respond. He slipped back from the ridge and began moving through the trees. He knew these mountains like he knew his own body. Every trail, every cave, every dangerous drop. They were stronger than him. Their weapons were more powerful, but this was his territory, and he intended to make them pay for every step. He had spent the previous 2 days preparing. Trip wires connected to flares that would blind and disorient. Pits covered with branches and filled with sharpened stakes. Rock slides rigged to collapse with a single pull of rope. Daniel had been a paramedic, not a soldier, but he had grown up in rural Montana, hunting and trapping with his father. He knew how to survive. He knew how to fight. The first died 30 minutes after their ultimatum. It walked into a covered pit that Daniel had dug near the creek. The creature screamed as the stakes pierced its legs and torso. Its companions rushed to help, and Daniel triggered the rock slide he had prepared. Tons of stone crashed down on all 3 hunters. 2 emerged from the rubble, battered but alive. The third did not. Daniel moved quickly to a new position. The remaining were enraged now. They fired their weapons wildly into the forest, burning trees and scorching earth. But Daniel was already gone, circling behind them through paths too narrow for their large bodies. He caught the second hunter alone near a cliff edge. It was examining tracks in the snow, trying to figure out which way Daniel had gone. It never saw him until the rifle bullet punched through a gap in its armor at the neck. The creature staggered and fell, crashing down the mountainside in a tumble of rocks and breaking branches. 2 down, 1 left. But the third was smarter than its companions. It stopped pursuing Daniel and instead turned toward the cabin. If it could not find the human, it would take the prize directly. Daniel saw what was happening and ran. He reached the cabin just as the did. The creature stood in the clearing before the front door, weapon raised. It saw Daniel emerge from the trees and smiled, an expression that showed far too many teeth. "Primitive," it growled through its translator. "You killed my pack mates with tricks and traps, but now there is nowhere to hide. Drop your weapon or I will burn your dwelling to ash with the inside." Daniel lowered his rifle. His mind raced through options and found none. He was out in the open, 50 yards from cover. If he ran, the would fire. If he charged, the would fire. If he did nothing, the would still fire. "You fought well," the said. It almost sounded impressed. "For a primitive, you showed courage. I will make your death quick as a reward." It raised its weapon. Daniel prepared to die. Then the cabin door opened and stepped out. She was pale and shaking, barely able to stand. In her hand she held the hunting knife Daniel had left on the kitchen table. She looked at them with those violet eyes, and there was no fear in them, only determination. "No," she said simply. The laughed. "The prey shows itself. Good. This makes my job easier." But it had made a mistake. It had turned its attention away from Daniel. And Daniel had not survived 3 years alone in these mountains by giving up when things looked hopeless. He drew the pistol from his belt and fired. The first shot hit this weapon, knocking it aside. The second shot hit the creature's hand, making it drop the gun entirely. It roared in pain and rage and charged at Daniel with its claws extended. Daniel stood his ground. He fired again and again, each shot finding gaps in the armor, each bullet slowing the creature down. but they kept coming. It was incredibly strong, incredibly tough. It refused to fall. Then was there. She threw herself at the from behind, driving her knife into the gap between its helmet and chest plate. The blade sank deep. The creature howled and spun, throwing her aside like a doll. But the damage was done. Green blood poured from the wound in its neck. Daniel raised his pistol one more time and fired directly into the creature's open mouth. The fell. Silence returned to the clearing. Daniel stood over the body, breathing hard. His hands were shaking. His ears were ringing. He had never killed anything larger than a deer in his life. Then he remembered. She lay in the snow where they had thrown her. Daniel ran to her side and gathered her in his arms. She was conscious but weak, her recent wounds reopened by the impact. "You should have stayed inside," he said, his voice rough with emotion. Smiled weakly. "You saved my life. I was not going to let you die alone." Daniel laughed despite everything. It was a broken sound, half sob and half relief. "Come on," he said, lifting her carefully. "Let us get you inside and patched up, again." Behind them, the bodies of the lay still in the cold Montana morning. Daniel Harper, former paramedic, carried the alien girl back to safety. His hands were steady now. His heart was full. For the first time in 3 years, he felt alive. Daniel woke in his own bed with sunlight streaming through the window. For a moment, he did not know where he was or what had happened. Then the pain arrived, sharp and insistent, and memory came flooding back. The fight, the throwing herself at the creature with nothing but a kitchen knife. He tried to sit up and gasped as his injuries protested. His chest was wrapped in bandages, and his left arm was secured in a makeshift sling. Someone had treated his wounds while he slept. "You should not move yet," his voice came from beside the bed. "You lost a lot of blood. You nearly died." Daniel turned his head and found her sitting in a chair, watching him with those violet eyes. She looked better than she had in days, almost healthy. Her skin had returned to its natural pale blue, and she was wearing one of his flannel shirts, which hung enormous on her small frame. "How long?" Daniel asked. His voice came out rough and dry. 3 weeks. You drifted in and out of consciousness for most of it. Your wounds became infected, and for a while I feared I would lose you." 3 weeks. Daniel tried to process this. He had been unconscious for 3 weeks while an alien girl cared for him in his own cabin. How he managed. Smiled. "I used your medical supplies as you showed me. I cleaned and bandaged and gave you the pills for infection. When I ran out of medicines, I sent a distress signal using the communication equipment on the ship. My people came." Daniel blinked. "Your people?" "The Resistance. A small ship arrived 8 days ago. They brought supplies and doctors and everything we needed." Smile grew wider. "They also brought news about you." She helped him sit up, supporting him with surprising strength. Daniel looked around the cabin and noticed differences. New equipment on the table, strange devices humming softly in the corners. His simple home had been transformed into something between a medical station and a communications hub. "Word has spread through the resistance networks," said. "A single human, alone, and killed 3 hunters to protect a refugee. No one believed it at first. They are the most feared warriors in the sector. They have never been defeated by a primitive species." Daniel did not know what to say. He had not been trying to make history. He had just been trying to save one life. "The story has traveled beyond the resistance," continued. "Traders and travelers carry it from system to system. The primitive humans of Earth, the galaxy said, too young and too weak to matter, but now they whisper different words. Now they wonder what else humans might be capable of." A door opened and 3 figures entered the cabin. 2 of them were recognizable by their blue skin and silver hair. The third was something else entirely, a tall being with golden skin and eyes like black pools. All 3 stopped when they saw Daniel was awake. "Daniel Harper," the golden being said. Its voice was deep and musical. "I am coordinator of the Allied Resistance. I have come a very long way to meet you." Daniel looked at, who nodded encouragingly. "The coordinator leads the largest freedom movement in this sector," she explained. "They fight against slavers and tyrants across dozens of star systems." Coordinator stepped closer. "We have watched humanity for many years. Your species is young and violent and unpredictable. Many in the galaxy believe you are too dangerous to contact. Others believe you are too primitive to be useful. I believed both of these things until I heard your story." "It is not much of a story," Daniel said. I just did what needed to be done. That is exactly my point. His black eyes studied him intently. Most species in your situation would have surrendered to save themselves. Most individuals would have calculated the odds and chosen survival over sacrifice. But you did not hesitate. You fought against impossible odds for someone you had no obligation to protect. Gestured too. She tells me you were broken when she arrived, lost in grief and isolation. Yet when the moment came, you found strength you did not know you had. That is rare in any species, Daniel Harper. That is valuable beyond measure. Daniel felt uncomfortable under this scrutiny. What do you want from me? The resistance needs people like you, said simply. Not soldiers or scientists or diplomats. We have those. What we lack are individuals who will stand firm when everything tells them to run, who will protect the weak because it is right, not because it is profitable, who will fight knowing they might lose because not fighting would be worse. You want me to join your resistance? I want to offer you a choice. You can remain here on your world, live out your life in peace. No one would blame you. You have already done more than anyone could ask. Paused. Or you can come with us, help us free others help us show the galaxy that humans are more than they believe. Daniel looked at. She was watching him with hope in her violet eyes, but also with acceptance. She would understand if he chose to stay. She would not judge him. But Daniel was thinking about the last 3 years, the silence and loneliness, the slow death of caring about anything. He had come to these mountains to fade away, and he had nearly succeeded. Then the universe had sent him a reason to live. I spent 3 years running from everything that mattered, Daniel said slowly. Running from pain, running from connection, running from the possibility of losing something else I cared about. He looked then at. I am done running. If there are others out there like her, others who need help, then I want to be there. I want to fight for them. Smiled, and for a moment her eyes glistened with tears. Nodded gravely. Then welcome to the resistance, Daniel Harper. Welcome to a much larger universe. 2 days later, Daniel stood outside his cabin for the last time. A shuttle waited in the clearing, its engines humming softly. Stood beside him, her hand resting on his arm. Are you certain, she asked, this is your home, your world? Daniel looked at the mountains he had loved, the pine trees and rocky peaks, the wilderness that had sheltered him in his darkest years. Home is not a place, he said finally. Home is a reason to keep going. For 3 years I did not have one, now I do. He turned and walked toward the shuttle, walked beside him, her steps steady and sure. Above them the stars waited. Somewhere out there people were suffering. Somewhere out there the weak were being preyed upon by the strong. Somewhere out there someone needed help. Daniel Harper, former paramedic, former hermit, stepped aboard the shuttle and did not look back. The universe had asked him to remember who he used to be. A man who saved lives because they needed saving. A man who fought because giving up felt worse than trying. A man who believed that one person could make a difference, even when all the odds said otherwise. The shuttle rose into the Montana sky and accelerated toward the stars. Below, the cabin grew small and then disappeared entirely, swallowed by the forest and the mountains. Daniel Harper was going home.